health counselor, providing therapeutic services, health counselor, providing therapeutic services focusing on esteem, identity, creator and host of the Becoming Unstuck podcast. So let's welcome Jordan.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me. All right. So to start off with, I want to get just an idea of those in the room and those online as well. How many of you are working professionals, therapists, interns, nurses, anything like that where you work with clients? Okay. How many about just friends and family, not a working professional, just here? Okay. All right, cool. I just want to get an idea in using the language and how I can kind of refer it to you or help you understand and just kind of where I'm connecting it to as well. So if I want you to get one thing today, this is what I want you to get. Now, sitting with suicide, dealing with it, talking about it, it gets heavy, right? And you sit in it. So if there's one thing I want you to get today, is I want you to walk out of this room with a little bit of hope going through the next one and the rest of the day. So thank you for the introduction. So building resiliency. Does anybody know what this picture is? Huh? Yep, absolutely, right? And the picture from Arndt, right? The human condition, really, right? The idea of pushing a rock up a hill, suffering, and the meaning that goes into it. So a little bit of philosophy. I love the picture, so I thought I'd throw it in, right? So to start off with, resiliency and hardiness. Definitions, if you just look them up, and I wanted to introduce it because I'm going to give an alternate definition at the end of the presentation today of what I feel resiliency and hardiness really connects to and how to use it and implement it a little bit. So if you look at the definition, resiliency is the capacity to recover quickly from difficult situations and toughness, or the ability to spring back into shape, right? So I'm going to give an alternate one as we get to the end of it, and then we're going to compare them and we'll connect it. Areas we're going to talk about. Now, I gave a presentation on Wednesday, and I talked for an hour off 4 slides. So we're going to go through the beginning a little bit quicker, and then if we need to come back, we will, because I want to get to the meat of what we're talking about, and I don't want to lose time and not be able to get to it. I have a tendency to talk, and so I want to get to it and make sure we get to that content, right? So the areas we're going to talk about and then get into and bring into is we're going to talk about some developing areas that go into protective factors or building resilience within a human being, and how building that resilience can offer a way of working with and helping those who have suicidal ideation or having suicidal thoughts, and how to work towards recovery with them. And those areas of building that resilience within a person are first going to be an attachment or attachment patterns and attachment styles, identity, self-esteem, and then we're going to introduce hardiness and a meaning and a purpose to life and connecting those together. So we're going to go through the attachment, identity, self-esteem, and a little bit on the quicker, right? Because we're talking about suicide and resiliency to work with it. We're not in an attachment conference or a self-esteem conference, right? So just the beginning part of it, attachment and attachment patterns. If you're not familiar with it, not too much at it, right? Dan Siegel. So a quote from it: infants having a primary adult who is caring for them in sensitive ways, who can perceive, make sense of, and respond to their needs, give them a feeling of safety. And that's really what we're going for, is a feeling of safety in attachment. So these are the first instances of a person's life and how we connect to caregivers and our attachment patterns. We know have a lot of research behind how that leads to resiliency in adult relationships and the later areas of life. All right, so adult attachments, just kind of an overview for you guys to have. 4 basic areas of attachment patterns: secure, dismissive or avoidant, preoccupied or anxious, and disorganized, unresolved, or fearful as well. Right? So the reason I want to include this and why I did is because we're going for a secure attachment or an earned secure attachment, right? Let's say that early childhood experiences, and I believe there's actually one this afternoon that talks about an ACE study or ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences, which is exactly what this is and what we're talking about, right? We know that early attachment to caregivers has a huge impact on a person's self-esteem going into adulthood and their ability to make and connect meaningful relationships in adulthood. And it starts with the earliest years of life. And so we're working towards a secure or earned secure attachment. If your experience growing up may not have been a preferable one, you're not screwed for life, right? We're gonna work towards an earned secure attachment by working to repair and build the aspects that allow us to have meaningful connections. So I add these to it because as you look at how it applies in your life or people in your life, we want to know what our attachment pattern is and then how to work with it or change it in a way that allows us to connect more meaningful with the people in it. So earn secure attachment, and why we want to earn secure attachment is because secure attachments are going to lead to certain belief systems. So along with the kind of therapy I do, I'm also an EMDR therapist. And EMDR focuses a lot on negative and positive belief systems and changing those belief systems. So an earned secure attachment is going to have positive belief systems associated with them, right? Capacity for love, capacity for self-regulation, self-awareness, attunement to others, emotional intimacy, emotional connection, and other things that are going to allow us to live a more meaningful life. So here's some examples of positive belief systems with a secure or earned secure attachment. And if you look at these and then you think of the opposite of these are going to provide a lot more stability in our life. If I can believe internally that it's safe to love and trust others, and by virtue, the opposite of that is it's not safe to love and trust others, right? That's going to have a huge impact on how I connect with people and the lens of which I look at the world. If I have a lens, right, you picture putting on a set of glasses. How many of you have glasses where the lens is tinted? It's hued. You ever seen those? Right, where like you're looking at the world and it's a blue tint or a pink tint. They also talk about like the rose-colored glasses in a new relationship sometimes, right? The lens in which I see the world, as much as you want to, there is no way you can change that of another person, right? And we're gonna get into that a little bit more as we go through the presentation. The lens in which somebody sees the world is the way that they view reality. So if I look at the world through a lens of people are untrustworthy and unsafe because of my attachment experiences, then every relationship I go into, I am going to have a fundamental belief system that you're untrustworthy. And that's not going to allow me to connect or be intimate in the way that I need to have a meaningful relationship. All right, so this quote, the early years of a child's development in promoting the resilience that protects them from suicide are essential. All right, so what can you do? Your attachment pattern, your attachment style, what can you do about it, right? Let's say that you or a person you know, friend you know, and now you're thinking about attachment patterns, styles, early childhood experiences. So this is what you do. Number one, we heal the wounded inner child. We do our work. We go back to childhood if we need to. We heal those parts of us that have been damaged in early experiences, and we work to move through them, rebuild them, and heal them the way that we need to. If you find yourself more on the anxious attachment style, meaning that you're going to try to hold on to and seize, so more so you fear the loss of connection. So I'm gonna hold on to it, I'm gonna grab it, even if it's toxic and not working, because the thought of losing that is so detrimental. I would rather deal with it than to lose it, right? If you fall on that side, we're gonna find value and meaning in ourselves without the need of another person. We have to separate our worth from another individual and then put it towards within ourselves, right? We gotta find the meaning within us. If you fall more on the avoidance side, which is you fear connection, you fear intimacy, don't want it, don't like it, it's gross, emotions are weird, right? Then we're gonna learn how to identify, feel, and express a full range of emotions within ourselves and within relationships. If we're disorganized or fearful, usually connects back to trauma. So we're gonna work on healing the trauma, linking a narrative with emotions, which means we're going to be able to connect the beginning of the story with the end of the story. Where it started to where we're at, connect emotions to them, and be able to tolerate the emotions as we recall the story from start to finish. We know that a lot of trauma is a fractured story of what happened through our life. We're going to restore self-esteem, and we're going to develop a coherent system of belief about your story, meaning I'm able to think back on my story and what happened and find meaning out of it. All right, identity. Second part to it. Identity formation, right? And as we go through life, our ability to form an identity is going to be crucial to how we build resiliency and how we use that in our life. So these two aspects to it, the ant effect and the chameleon effect, are going to be different aspects of identity that I'm going to add into and give to you guys. All right, so the ant effect and chameleon effect. And how I want you to think of it is not in a general sense, but we're talking about values. We're talking about deep-seated, personal, internalized values as a person. And the ant effect, and I have just listed up the definition of it, but I want you to think about the way that an ant acts. There's no individuality. There's no getting out of turn. It's for the collective greater good, and you fall in line. The ant effect and how it looks in daily life is your values, what your basis of understanding of morality, how you act, why you act, and the way you act is manifested through values internally, right? So if you find yourself in situations, in order to belong, to fit in, and to feel like I'm accepted, I'm going to suppress those values and beliefs and not speak to them. I'm going to hide them. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let them set to the side. And what happens when we do that is we reach adulthood and we start to then go, do the things that matter to me really matter? Are they important enough that I'm going to speak to them now? Or have I spent so many years suppressing them that I don't know if they matter enough to actually do anything about them? And what this does is it creates an identity crisis within us, that we don't know if who we are really is who we are, or if we need to find another way of challenging or making sense of those things within us. The second one, the chameleon effect, this one's a lot more dangerous because what we do is instead of suppressing them, we change them. We forego them. We opt to switch some of our internal values with one that's going to allow us to belong or be accepted in that moment. And so what happens is we get to adulthood and then we suddenly go, I have no idea if the things that I believe are mine or my parents or my brothers or my friends. And so I have no idea who I am anymore because I can't trust that the things that I think are me are actually me because I spent so much time changing them to try to feel like I fit in or belong somewhere. And so now that creates a huge identity crisis because now not only do I have to figure out if what is actually mine, but then change what isn't mine and decide if I still want it anymore. All right, so identity, self-esteem. All right, attachment, identity, self-esteem, building blocks, and I told you we're gonna go through them a little bit quicker, right? And then we're gonna get to the stuff and bring it all in towards the end. So self-esteem is a realistic, appreciative opinion of oneself. Realistic means accurate and honest. Appreciative implies positive and liking. So self-esteem involves a clear view of who we are, and deep inside at the core, we're quietly glad to be who we are. I love this definition because in order to have an accurate self-esteem, I have to have a true reflection of me. The good, the bad, the wanted, the unwanted, everything that makes up who I am. And even though I still like myself, I still love myself, I can still find value and meaning in who I am despite my flaws and imperfections, right? All right. So Glenn Schiraldi, if any of you are familiar with his work, has a book called The Self-Esteem Workbook. A lot of good things in it. One of them is this, and it talks about the basic building blocks of self-esteem. First one being unconditional worth. So we look at that word unconditional. What does it mean? Doesn't matter. No conditions upon it. There's nothing you could ever do, have done, or will do that will change it. Right? So if we look at that unconditional worth, then the worth of a person, that's a little bit harder to answer, right? What is the worth of a person? Now, research shows that there are similarities between humans and what we want, and it goes down to a few things. Everyone, regardless of who you are, where you're from, what you've been through, is deserving of three things: to be loved, to be accepted, and to feel like you belong. Everyone is deserving of those things. So unconditional worth is there is nothing that you can do, will do, or have ever done that will make you not deserving to be loved, to be accepted, and to feel like you belong somewhere. That is the first building block of self-esteem, because if we don't believe fundamentally that we have worth, then we can't love anything that we feel is worthless. Step two, unconditional love. Same thing. There's nothing that you have done, will do, or have ever done that will make you undeserving to be loved and to love yourself. This one I feel is most challenging because on a daily basis, think about how many of us or people you know have negative self-talk, right? How many times we tell ourselves on a daily basis, we're not enough, we're not good enough, we're not fill in the blank, right? What we do to ourselves on equivalence. I want you to imagine sitting in Vivint Arena or familiar stadium or wherever you're from, right? Half court right in the middle, and you sit in a chair, and the entire stadium is full, 30,000 people. And one by one, someone comes down and sits in front of you and tells you something negative about yourself. By the time that stadium empties, how low are you going to feel? Right? We're going to feel worthless. And yet that's the equivalency of what we do to ourselves on a daily basis. With social media, negative self-talk, comparisons, we are the worst to ourselves as compared to everyone, right? Unconditional love starts with us. You think about what love means and what it means to love someone, and then apply that to yourself. And yet we don't do it often, right? So unconditional worth, unconditional love, and then growing, which is just the practice of those on a daily basis. All right, so just some studies talked about resiliency. A few studies found self-esteem as it increases, so too does positive thinking, social support, which then increases resiliency. So through just a couple studies just to help that there is some research and backup that resiliency is a huge protective factor for suicide and working with it. So, all right, so what can you do self-esteem wise? If you yourself are struggling, someone you're working with is struggling, we're working with self-esteem. Develop a new sense of identity by recognizing the unconditional worth and unconditional love. Live a value-driven life as free from negative defense mechanisms as possible, right? We just want to diminish them as much as we can. And then limit social media, stop comparing yourself, and stop comparing your practice tape with people's highlight reels. All right, session code, build. All right, we got it? Good. All right, so hardiness. We're gonna throw this in. Talked about attachment, identity, self-esteem. Now we're getting to hardiness. Now hardiness and resiliency, there's different definitions, but they're very, very similar, almost exactly the same definition-wise when you look them up, which is really confusing, right? So principles and pillars of hardiness. Now when you're working with clients or family or anyone else that you come in contact with, hardiness is going to be something that you're going to be providing or helping them get to. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the differences between resiliency and hardiness as we get to the end of this so that there is a difference to them. But 3 pillars of hardiness: commitment, control, and challenge. So commitment, we're going to commit to the challenge ahead of us. We commit to the moment, we commit to getting through it, we commit to whatever it is that we need to do to get through that moment. Now, we're talking about some of the most heart-wrenching moments in people's lives. Whether you've gone through a trauma, a trial, a tragedy, whether you've had a loss, whether you yourself are in this place, sometimes the only thing that you can do is commit to not letting it destroy you, whatever it is, just getting through the day. And if that's what you can commit to, that's okay. Commit to it. Second one is control, all right? How many of you are familiar with the serenity prayer? Yeah. So if you're not familiar with it, right, God or higher power, whatever you want to include into it, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? A lot of our internal anxieties or chaos, I think, comes from just trying to control things that we can't control in any way. So I need to commit to whatever it is that I can do to get through that moment. And I need to control what I can and let go of what I can't control. And then when I realize what I can control and cannot control, I need to have courage to change those things and do something about them in some way. Challenge, third one. Now, the challenge part of this, commitment, control, and challenge, is going to speak to the idea that everyone in life has a challenge of some kind, right? Whatever it is that you go through is unique to you. We don't compare trauma. We don't compare challenges, because one challenge to one person may not be a challenge to another. Yet life will always find a way to make sure that we're challenged. It's really good at doing that, right? So the challenge in front of us, and there's 2 ways to look at the challenge. There will be a moment where we get knocked down, and that's okay. What's not okay is to stay there. So we understand that the challenges that we go through are unique to us, and they're for a reason, and we need to find a meaning and a purpose to why we're experiencing that challenge of some kind. Individuals you're working with will come to you with challenges that they feel have brought them to the brink of what they can handle. This may be one of the reasons that they're suicidal. Whether it's an internal means or whether it's something they've experienced that they don't think that they've got through, right? Now, I will openly admit there are things that I have not gone through that if I were, I don't know that I could handle them. They would break me. I do not know what I would do, right? Some of you may have experienced them in this room. And if you have, I don't know what you've gone through. What I do know is that in that challenge is an opportunity to be more. And this is where I believe resiliency comes in, and where I believe it has a role and plays a purpose in working with suicide, whether it's with ourselves or whether it's with clients, friends, and family. So Viktor Frankl, if you're familiar with Viktor Frankl and logotherapy, Man's Search for Meaning, has this quote: "We must never forget that we may also find meaning in life even when confronted with a hopeless situation. When facing a fate that cannot be changed, for what then matters is to bear witness to the uniquely human potential at its best, which is to transform a personal tragedy into a triumph, to turn one's predicament into a human achievement. When we are no longer able to change the situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." All right. Hey, we're doing good on time. All right, so this is where we're getting to. This is what I'm excited about. This is what leads into it, everything we're going to talk about. So let me ask you, how many of you, when learning, whether it's through school, whether it's through education, I learned, and this was surprising to me. I remember going through school and learning about it and sitting with someone and a supervisor, and I said, okay, I'm working with someone who is having suicidal ideation, and they're suicidal. What's my goal? What do I do? I say, okay, well, do a crisis plan, do a safety plan, make sure that they're safe in the moment, that they got family, they got support, if they need to go to a hospital, great. So, okay, cool. And then what? Well, just hope that they don't get they're not suicidal anymore. I say, what? What is that? So I do a safety plan, I do a crisis plan, and then I just wait for them to not be suicidal anymore? Right? How many of you feel like that was your experience? Is that what you learned? Yeah, I couldn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me because I was like, well, the same thing that made them become suicidal didn't change. They're still facing it, they're still dealing with it, or they're still in it. So what's a safety plan going to do to change that for them? It's going to keep them safe for the day, for the night, for the week maybe, but then what? Now, we've heard a lot of today, and we'll hear more about programs that Utah does to help fight this and do stuff to change this, which is great. For me, I look at this in this model. So this model, the pain and hope model, was, I don't know if it was started or developed, but really made popular by William White, who works a lot with AA and works a lot with recovery and substance use. He talks a lot about this principle, and I think it applies hugely to working with suicide, because really what we're trying to do is to help them get out of pain. If you're out of pain, you're not suicidal anymore. So get out of pain, and the suicide goes away. The problem is that pain is never a motivator. It can't be. Pain does not have any motivating qualities or properties to it. What ends up happening is we stay stuck in the pain. It becomes comfortable, familiar, known, common, and even though we don't want it and it's toxic and we know that there's something better, we don't know how to find that. So when somebody is suicidal and they've been suicidal for a long time, it becomes comfortable. They don't know how to get out of the pain. So as a clinician or someone working with them, and I say, okay, we're gonna get you a safety plan, and then we're just gonna get you out of the pain, and it will be good, right? We use the language a lot. And in fact, I think society tends to do this and motivate through pain, and it doesn't work, right? We use slogans and language like, I'll go to the gym when I hate myself enough to do it. I'll start to eat right when I feel bad enough. I'll do my homework when I absolutely need to, or the pain of the procrastination gets so much. Or when I'll love myself when there's something worth loving. So I'm going to wait for my self-esteem to get low enough that it's then going to motivate me to do something about it. Now, this also happens therapeutically, right? I'll ask a lot of my clients, I'll say, okay, well, what brought you in and why now? And they'll say, well, the pain of my life got so bad that I needed to do it. Okay. Or the pain was so bad that my mom called and scheduled this appointment. All right. So we're motivated off pain, but we're not motivated. We just want to get out of the pain, right? Don't know how to, don't know what direction it is. I just want to get out of pain. The reality is that the pain, when it increases, doesn't push us in the direction that we're wanting to. What ends up happening, and for anyone who's worked with recovery or worked with someone in this moment, is there's a brief moment that happens when the pain starts to transition, and then they suddenly have a moment where they go, you know, maybe actually I can do it. And what happens is in that moment, there's a transition from the pain to a moment of hope that goes, yeah, you know what? Maybe I can be sober. Maybe there's a chance. Maybe despite all the medications, the therapy, and the hospitals, I could not be depressed. Wow, that's a weird thought. So what happens is the transition from pain moves to a moment of hope. And then you're motivated to do something. Then you go to therapy. Then you get help. Then you do something, right? And I want to take this model and I want to transition it more into using it clinically to build on hope instead of trying to get someone out of pain. Because I can't do that. None of us can do that. I can give you coping skills. I can give you worksheets and thought records and work through trauma and past and everything, and I can help you do that, all to help you get a moment of hope that shows you you can do it. But I can't do it, and I don't want to try to do it. right? I want you to do it, and we want them to do it. So we try to get them out of the pain by instilling hope to do that. So this model, and I kind of put it together in a way that resiliency and building resiliency and hope with clients and those that you work with, or yourself as well, the basics of resiliency and our ability to be resilient. And I'm gonna bring this back, different definition of resiliency and hardiness right afterwards. So self-esteem, identity, and attachment will all come together to create a core self. And that core self is often formed in adolescent, early adult years. Attachment in early childhood, identity and self-esteem in adolescence, teenage years, and young adulthood, and we form a core self. That core self can use hardiness, right? I think it's something that every one of us can have and does have. We increase hope, which builds resiliency, which gives someone a purpose and a reason to live. And what I want to do is, instead of getting you out of pain, I want to give you a reason to live. Because that's going to motivate you 10 times more than I could ever do in just trying to get you out of pain. So resiliency and definition-wise, so the original definition is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness, and then the ability to spring back into shape. And I want to alter a different definition. Now, this is not in any way something that I'm going to tell you is fact or truth or documented or whatever. This is my opinion on how I would define self-esteem or resiliency and hardiness if I were to do it, okay? So I look at resiliency as a hidden aspect of survival that allows a person to endure the most heartbreaking aspects of the human existence while holding on to and maintaining a sense of joy, self, and the ability to find meaning and purpose in their life. I feel like this is an untapped strength that's directly correlated and built from a lifetime of attachment patterns, identity formation, and self-esteem. There are moments that bring us to our knees. And I look at those moments and I study them and I see them in clients and research and everything. And I look and I go, what's different? What is different about somebody who experiences some of the worst tragedies you can imagine and yet comes through on the other end happy, meaningful life, driven, and they find value in meeting out of the experience? And then what's the difference between somebody who experiences a tragedy and stays stuck in it for the next 50 years? So I look at resiliency as something deeper, something internally within each of us that we don't need every day. It's an untapped strength that only comes out when we absolutely need it. And it's there, and we can cultivate it and grow it and have it be there so that when that moment brings us to our knees, we have the capacity to get through it. But it's built by a secure attachment, a solid identity, and a strong self-esteem. I look at hardiness as the ability to go through life. Everyone has trials, whether it's financial, whether it's job related, whether it's educational, family, relationships. Life gives you bumps. And it's hard sometimes. But it's not always that impactful and hurtful as some of the bigger things that we go through. Right? I think every day there's challenges of some kind. So I look at hardiness as the ability to be able to have a road bump in life, something kind of challenges you, and you find a way to work through it. And I think that more is a developed trait that we can do, right? One of the things that I see going on, and maybe you have experienced this too, I'm amazed at how many teenagers I look at and I go, you realize anxiety is a part of life, right? It's okay. You can have anxiety and still go to school. You're good. But nope. This is the most earth-shattering thing you will ever experience. I go, no. Yeah, anxiety, I know it's hard, you bet. And I'm not gonna pretend to know what yours feels like, but life is hard. That's okay, right? I see that as one of the larger societal problems a little bit, right? Is that there's no hardiness. There's no ability to go, yeah, you know what? Today sucked, but that's okay. There's tomorrow. I'm completely devastated and thrown down by this one thing somebody said, right? That I see as hardiness. And everyone has it, and everyone can develop it, and everyone can practice it and connect to it because it's a daily thing, right? Mental toughness, hardiness, fortitude, your ability to have a positive mindset when stuff goes wrong. I look at resiliency as a much deeper thing that every one of us still has. We just need to know how to connect to it a little bit more. And so working with suicidal ideation and working with clients, friends, family, all of it, even yourself, right? How do you develop resiliency within yourself? That deeper strength that you have, you just don't know it until you get to the moment that it needs to come out. But we need to develop both because both gives us the ability to go through life in a positive mindset, happy, joy, passion, all of it that we want life to be, right? All right, where are we at time-wise? 10 minutes, give or take. All right, case example, right? I like these. I don't know if anyone else does, but they make me think, right? So case example wise, and using this idea of resiliency, attachment, identity, all of it and how it goes together. If you got questions, let's talk about them. We got 10 minutes that we're gonna be able to do questions. You can ask and kind of look at things on a deeper level. Case example wise, common example, right? A 19-year-old college, university student came in reporting the symptoms of depression. Client reports being dissatisfied with life, finds no meaning in daily activities, people are inauthentic, always have a motive, appears to believe existentially there's no meaning to life, suicidal thoughts, intent, plan. How do you work with this client, right? And this is why I did the case examples, because I want to show how it actually works when working with people. How do you use it? So, clinically, safety plan, we commit to treatment, right? Got to keep them safe. We know that's part of it, and that's okay. Absolutely. I do think safety plans have a place and a purpose. I think they do things, right? They keep you safe for the moment, but using resiliency in a different way of looking at it, we're going to learn first, right? Keep you safe, and then just clinical practices and a good way to do it, emotional regulation, distress tolerance, and coping skills, right? We got to help you know how to deal with emotions on a daily basis so that you can regulate yourself. Can't do anything if you don't have emotional regulation to start off with, right? So now comes the installation of pain versus hope. So, not in pain, but still in pain. We're safe. Let's say that, okay? We're safe for the moment. Have some coping strategies, know how to do it, know how to practice it. Now we install hope into the person's life to get them to be able to connect to those things, right? Now this is the point to where you'd say, well, let's get you out of pain, however that is, right? And I want to flip that. I don't want to get you out of pain. I want to give you a reason to know that life is worthwhile. So attachment. So I have a few slides on self-esteem, attachment, and identity that just go through the case example. Now, I want to get your guys' thoughts. Is this something you want to do? Is it triggering? Is it not helpful? I genuinely want your feedback on whether or not this is something that would be helpful or not. Okay? All right, I want to be aware of that, right? I realize triggers can be part of it, and that's okay. I want to be cautious and aware of where you're at and if it is going to be helpful or not, right? So attachment, identity, and self-esteem. Starting point of where we're going to start to install hope, because no meaning of life, no belief that life has an existence, right? I need to start over at the starting blocks of what's going to give you a resiliency to be able to get through this moment, right? So I want to help build resiliency to be able to overcome, work with, and fight the suicidal ideation on a daily basis. I can't give you a safety plan every day and hope that you're going to follow it, and then when you don't, take you to the hospital, right? So I want to build resiliency in you so that when you're at home, you can do this on your own. So we start off with the basics of where resiliency is built from: attachment, identity, and self-esteem. And then we're going to install hope into those so that they have the internal means of coping to be able to draw that out themselves. So attachment, they reported that mom and dad were good providers, got along with his siblings all right. Oldest child, mom and dad had to deal with younger siblings. As long as he was a good kid, no problems. Mom reported that they were young parents and did their best, and maybe made a few mistakes, but they feel like overall they were good parents who loved him and they tried. He reports bad days or hard days at school, never talked to dad, either because dad wasn't home because he was working or traveling, and dad wasn't good at talking about that kind of stuff. So he wasn't the best person to go to, right? Mom was a little helpful and better at those things, but she often tried to fix or reassure. And so he didn't really feel comfortable talking to mom about some guy things that he was going through. And often she would become distracted by another sibling in the middle of their conversations and not finish the conversation, right? Leaving him unvalidated, unsure, and not really knowing what to do in those moments. So clinically, extremely disconnected from emotions, absolutely no awareness of emotional intelligence, what emotions are, even how to label them, what they feel like, where you feel them in your body, and is completely disconnected entirely emotionally. Absolutely avoidant. Okay. All right, basic of attachment right here. Self-esteem. Doesn't have a ton of friends in high school. Had some friends. Friend he did have reported as being inauthentic, confused who they were, trying to chase the facade or approval of liking of other people, and we're not really sure why that's what they wanted so much. Self-exploration led to identity himself as a chameleon effect, so changed values to fit in, right? Cannot identify any values, and if they are his or just what he thinks, should be based on what his parents, friends, or people in high school said they should be. His friend group in college, which is roommates and others he has met in the dorms, are like his family. In fact, he reports feeling more love and connection to his college friends than towards his actual family. Anxiety about what they think of him, do they like him, will they ghost him, stay friends for life, are all questions that consume every waking moment and bring intense anxiety and a lot of internal chaos. If he perceives he made a mistake in front of them, he will be preoccupied with the thought of being found out as a fraud, and the thought of hearing we don't want to be friends anymore is utterly debilitating. So, start off a few minutes. What do we know about attachment and self-esteem so far, just based off this? Say what? Okay. But completely disconnected from emotions too, right? A little bit of both maybe. Really, really anxious, but absolutely is so fearful of any emotional connection and intimacy, right? Okay. What else? He has no idea who he is in any sense of it, right? Absolutely no idea. not only has no idea who he has no idea who he should be, or needs to be, or has to be. All he knows is that there's this group of friends that he feels really connected to. And it is the first connection in his entire life that he has ever felt mattered in any way. And yet at the same time, there is such a debilitating fear that they're going to go away. And he's going to be alone again. So not only has he had no idea who he is or who he needs to be, he's so scared that whatever choice he makes, if it's not what's going to keep his friends around, isn't going to matter anyway. Right? All right, identity. Unsure who he is, able to define values in his life, or unable to define values by what he wants, did not feel he had a place or group of people he felt he belonged to or was accepted with, no hobbies, interests were stated to be what he had to do rather than what he wanted to do. So, such as music, right? Mom made him learn piano growing up. Is beginning to explore questions of sexual orientation, attraction, and belonging for the first time. Did a values card sort and identified which values he would like to have and live by. Has a friend group he feels he belongs to and is accepted by. So what are the starting roots of how we're going to install resiliency with this individual? Okay, yeah. Start somewhere, right? Let's find out if there's anything that you actually are interested in, right? Now, we're going to go back and work. Now, the framework of this is I'm going to build resiliency internally to help you overcome suicidal ideation by learning that life is meaningful, or at least worth being a part of on some days, right? So attachment, identity, self-esteem, and hardiness. So we're going to connect to, right? We're going to go back to the aspects of attachment. Now, whether it's anxious or avoidant, we want to work towards an earned secure attachment. Whether that's inner child work, whether that's parts work, whether that's any way that's going to help resolve some aspect of knowing how to build a secure attachment with other people and develop some positive beliefs about himself in some way, right? Now, identity has absolutely no sense of identity. So how do you replicate building an identity in teenage years? Right? It's almost ridiculous. Yeah. Interests? Okay. Yeah, we want, and this is where the interests come in, but also the current friend group that he has. Right? Okay. Good. Start at home, communication, relationships, you bet. We're starting with the relationships he does have that he has connected to help him understand what it actually feels like to care for another person, which then can help him understand what it feels like to care for himself the way he would somebody else. So basics of attachment, how he connects to a secure attachment, how he connects relationally to other people. We're going to help him form and build a sense of identity, who he is, how he connects, how he identifies, how he belongs in some sense of it, right? And then we're going to also help instill an aspect of self-esteem and self-love in some way. Who you are, and can you learn to be okay with who you are? Whoever that is, right? However that is. And it's really, really small right now, right? We're not going to build a self-esteem overnight or an identity overnight. This is long work. But even knowing and having the idea that, whoa, wait, you mean I can care about another person and this is what it feels like? Yeah, that's called love. It's called liking. That's called a connection in some way. And for the first time in his entire life, he goes, oh, that's why people have friends. Yeah. So we start with positive beliefs, building an attachment, Now, maybe there's going to need to be some repair work with parents too. Just whatever happened with him, right? And then we keep going with that as many times as we need to and building until he can get to the point to where he goes, well, I kind of like myself a little bit, and I like having friends, and I feel like that's enough. Thanks. That's enough to at least keep me here for right now, right? And that's what we're looking for, right? I want to build something internally within you that you yourself get to a point to where you go, actually, you know what? I kind of do want to be here. And then we work with it, and we build it, and we cultivate it, and we help them do the same thing in every way that is, right? So, well, that's it. We're out of time. Yeah, we got to it all. Good. All right. Thanks, everybody.